When the popular cartoon Inspector Gadget was adapted into a live-action movie, multiple people were involved in the creation of this nostalgic favorite. Well, nostalgic to me, anyway. Director David Kellogg, screenwriters Kerry Aaron and Zach Penn, composer John Debney, and lead actors Matthew Broderick and Rupert Everett are probably the most recognized for their contributions to this fast-paced, special effects-filled comedy. But watching the credits, there are other names you may or may not be surprised to learn had a hand in bringing Inspector Gadget to the big screen. So let's celebrate their efforts, big and small. Matthew O'Callaghan. I actually did a video detailing his impressive career some years back, but it's worth mentioning his filmography again. On Inspector Gadget, O'Callaghan was responsible for supervising the animation for the Gadgetmobile, but his association with Disney Productions goes back even further. He started as an animator on projects like The Black Cauldron and The Great Mouse Detective, and eventually got the chance to direct the television special Sport Goofy and Soccer Mania. He also worked at Hyperion for a short while where he directed the animated short The Itsy Bitsy Spider, and then collaborated with comedian Louis Anderson on the cartoon show Life with Louie. His period working on Inspector Gadget was when he dabbled in visual effects for live-action movies, but I think his best work to date has been a series of CG Looney Tunes shorts he made for Warner Brothers, and his hand-drawn animated adaptation of Curious George. Like I said, I did a whole tribute to his career if you want a more extensive overview. Richard Kiel. One of the most humorous gags in the Inspector Gadget movie is a quick mid-credit scene, where we see a villain's minion meeting, and you can see famous Bond foe Richard Kiel right there among the extras. As an added joke, Kiel is specifically credited as famous big guy with silver teeth. Kiel is of course most well known for playing the role of metal-mouthed heavy Jaws in 2 James Bond films. Through his appearances in The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, Kiel developed quite a fan following of how he went toe-to-toe with Roger Moore's 007. Of course, his credits go far beyond that, including guest spots on I Dream of Jeannie and The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and showing up in popular movies like Happy Gilmore and the original Longest Yard. He also voiced one of the snuggling duckling patrons in the Disney animated film Tangled. Sadly, he passed away from a heart attack in 2014, but he will be always remembered for his towering height and his battles with Bond. Andy Heyward. Among the people listed as party guests in the credits, you will notice one character referred to as Mr. DIC, played by this gentleman. This name is of course a nod to the animation company which produced the original cartoon, and Heyward, along with Jean Chapelain and Bruno Bianchi, was one of the creators of Inspector Gadget. Heyward also served as the CEO of DiC Entertainment for many years, and was an executive producer on the many cartoons the company was involved with. Of course, DiC's brief association with Disney happened when the Mouse bought the studio's parent company, which is what led to Disney producing the Inspector Gadget movie. Eventually, DiC went independent again before merging with the Cookie Jar Group, formerly CNR. But if you're a fan of the 80s Dennis the Menace cartoon, the 90s Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons, and the Littles animated series, you have Andy Heyward to partly thank for bringing those to television sets everywhere. Guy Diaz. One of the neatest things about the Inspector Gadget movie is seeing how they adapt his various doohickeys to the screen. Guy Hendrix Dyas, as he is more commonly credited, was one of the folks responsible, as he served as a concept illustrator on the film. He worked on conceptual designs for a number of big movies around this time, including Galaxy Quest, Wild Wild West, and Monkey Bone. Starting with X-Men 2, Diaz has also become a prolific production designer, later working on the sets for Superman Returns, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and The Nutcracker in the Four Realms. He has also earned 2 Oscar nominations for bringing a dream world to life in Inception and designing the shiny spacecraft interiors of Passengers. He has certainly proven himself a talented designer, and he has been able to bring his unique visual ideas to a variety of projects. Lino DiSalvo. While he is most often associated with his work on Disney's animated movies, he started his career working on computer-generated effects at DreamQuest Images, a visual effects company briefly owned by Disney. Inspector Gadget was even his first credit, and then he later worked on the likes of 102 Dalmatians and Kangaroo Jack. DiSalvo then moved over to Walt Disney Animation, starting with Chicken Little, and then animating on their next batch of projects before being promoted to head of animation on Frozen. He left Disney to serve as the creative head of Paramount Animation, which did not last very long. His love for the Playmobil toy line led to DiSalvo developing an idea for a movie based on the toys, and his directorial debut, the Playmobil movie, will be hitting the big screen this summer. I for one think it has a lot of potential and look forward to seeing DiSalvo's talents displayed on that project and future ones. Chris Bailey. Serving as an animation supervisor on Inspector Gadget, Bailey has been involved in multiple productions, including animated features, live-action blockbusters, and television cartoons. He was an animator on a number of Disney films, including The Lion King and Hercules. He has also found success bringing CG characters to life as an animation supervisor on the likes of Hocus Pocus, Mighty Joe Young, Hop, and the Garfield and Alvin and the Chipmunks movies. His directing credits are an impressive batch too. He directed the Oscar-nominated Mickey Mouse cartoon Runaway Brain, in which Disney's beloved mascots switch brains in a Frankenstein-like experiment. Bailey also directed the 4D attraction It's Tough to Be a Bug for Disney's Animal Kingdom, and directed several episodes of the Clerks animated series and Kim Possible. He has managed to showcase his talents in a number of animation fields, and is definitely a name to look out for. Mark Crash McCreery. One of the best concept artists working today, you'll find McCreery's contributions on a large number of high-profile productions, although he was primarily an effects supervisor and puppeteer on Inspector Gadget. A franchise he's been a notable hand on has been Jurassic Park, where he has served as a concept and special effects artist on all the films. His imagination for incredible and fantastical creatures also led to gigs, designing characters and animals for Batman Returns, Small Soldiers, Enchanted, and Van Helsing. He has even been involved with Universal Studios' annual Halloween Horror Night celebration. McCreery also has a fruitful collaboration with Gore Verbinski, providing creature designs for the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and production design for The Lone Ranger. And for his unique designs for the animals populating a western town in Rango, McCreery took home an Annie Award. I definitely look forward to seeing what creatures he comes up with in the future. Adam Shankman. If you watch any number of 90s movies, you might notice Shankman's name credited as a choreographer. We commonly associate that job with musicals and action films, but Shankman has mostly served as one on comedies, and on Inspector Gadget he was curiously credited as both a choreographer and a physical comedy consultant, so he deserves some praise for the many pratfalls and other hijinks that populate the movie. Shankman eventually jumped into the directing chair, making his debut with the romantic comedy The Wedding Planner. His most acclaimed work to date, though, was the film adaptation of the hit Broadway musical Hairspray. He is also currently set to direct the sequel to Enchanted whenever Disney gets around to finally greenlighting it. If you look up Adam Shankman's credits, I think you'll be surprised to see many of the movies listed on his resume. Michael Arndt. Arndt is most well known today as a screenwriter on blockbuster movies, but long before then he was Matthew Broderick's assistant on a few movies, including Inspector Gadget. Shortly after his time with Broderick, Arndt wrote the script for Little Miss Sunshine, which spent a number of years being developed until finally hitting screens in 2006. He won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay and was promptly hired by Pixar to write Toy Story 3, which he did a marvelous job on. Since then, he's worked on the screenplays for the science fiction movies Oblivion and The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, and he wrote the initial drafts for Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Arndt was even at one point tapped to write a Phineas and Ferb movie that never got off the ground. He still collaborates with Pixar on occasion, and I'm sure he has more projects awaiting on the horizon. Maybe he'll write something for Matthew Broderick. And the number one name you may recognize in the Inspector Gadget movie credits is Stan Winston. One of the greatest visual effects wizards, Winston's role on Inspector Gadget involved the many animatronic effects featured throughout the movie. Say what you will about the movie, but I think even the film's biggest detractors can admit the combination of animatronic, practical, and computer effects were pretty seamless, and Winston was definitely a large reason why. Winston's credits, going back to the 70s, are too numerous to mention, but he found himself involved with some of the most breathtaking visual effects through the 80s and 90s, whether it was turning Arnold Schwarzenegger and Robert Patrick into imposing robots in Terminator 2, wrangling the ferocious dinosaurs of Jurassic Park, and making us scared of some terrifying outer space beings in Aliens and Predator. He was also a skilled makeup artist, turning Danny DeVito into the Penguin, Tom Cruise into a vampire, and Mike Myers into an overweight Scottish man. He even jumped into directing with the underrated horror movie Pumpkinhead. Stan Winston sadly died in 2008, but he left behind a legacy of incredible achievements in special effects, and his work is still a heavy influence on the teams working on the current Jurassic Park and Terminator movies. However, of his many contributions to cinema, one of my favorites remains his role in turning Matthew Broderick into a gadget-filled inspector. Like many of Stan Winston's special effects, they still impressively hold up today. If you hate this movie, and many certainly do for valid reasons, remember it was still the result of many talented people putting an enormous amount of effort to bring it to the screen. Every single person pitched in with their contributions to the Inspector Gadget movie, and I, for one, thank them. See you next time.